Good morning. Welcome to River's Edge Homestead. Today we're going to be doing some welding. Now, something I highly recommend every homesteader to do, and you're here at my off-grid homestead, and so we're kind of limited by a few things. We're limited by the power of my generator. I have a 7,500 watt generator, and so that's basically our limitations. Now, I kind of borrowed this from my shop, my on-grid place, my on-grid shop. This is called a Lincoln AC 225 welder. Now, this is a 50 amp welder, and obviously, if you know anything about electricity, 7,500 watts is not going to drive this welder. My generator does put out 240, but 30 amps. So you can get away with using an oversized welder, but you just can't get the current out of it. Now, my generator on this welder will give me 75 amps, and I can weld with that. Now, if you're thinking about buying a welder, there's a myriads of options out there. Whether you want to go stick, whether you want to go wire feed, it all depends on your application. Now, out at the homestead, I use stick, mostly because I didn't want to make the investment into a wire feed, and I don't like moving my wire feed back and forth to camp. So I just kind of borrowed this one and I left it here. But this one's going back to my shop because ultimately it doesn't do, I don't have enough power to run it. It is a heavy duty welder. It will weld up to a 1/2 inch, no problem. So that kind of application, I would probably be in my shop anyway. So this kind of goes back to the shop. Now, if you do have a 12 kilowatt generator and you can run a welder, this Lincoln AC 225 is Lincoln's most popular and most sold welder out there. Okay, having said that, if you go to most old farms, homesteads, garages, you will find one of these old things tucked away in a corner. They run, they're bulletproof, they're heavier than sin, but they do the job and they actually do it really well. So now a lot of people are getting rid of these. They've gone to wire feed. Now, again, wire feeds are great. You don't have to change your rod all the time. You just keep welding. However, wire feeds do have some limitations. Thickness of metal is one of them. So if you get into 1/2 inch, some farm implements do have on them, you need to be able to weld really well if you can't get the current, or you need a big beast like this. So again, something to think about. Now, because this one is heavy, I tend to leave it stationary. Now you say, well, I got to weld way over there, but my welder is stationary. So when you work with one of these heavy welders, you tend to extend your leads. Okay, and what I mean by that is you get couplers. They look like this. And I can add welding cable to my welder to reach that trailer or do whatever I need to do. Now, having said that, there is now another option out there, of course, with the influx of Chinese stuff and offshore stuff. There's new welders out. Now, one of the things I did invest in is this little guy. Now, this is just a little stick welder, 220 volts. If you're going to buy a welder, make sure you can run 220 volts and run a 220 volt welder. They do a nicer job. You can run a 120. Everybody I know who's ran 120 will tell you they make an ugly weld. You have to be a little better at it. Now, I'm just learning myself, so my welds aren't great. So this is a little 220 volt DC stick welder. Now, I got it for like $100 because I bought it on a Boxing Day sale from the local retailer, and I want to see how well it works. Now, the drawback with any type of welder is how long your leads are, or how long your basically your electrode length. Now, this one's probably 10 feet. So you got to be able to move your welder or extend your leads. Now, these little guys, because they're so light, you can just move them around, but you're going to need an extension cord, or you're going to have to move your generator with it. Now, I have an extension cord on this one that I made up at 220 volt. When I bought this old trailer here, which is an old house trailer, it had a cord good for 50 amps. So I put it all together and I extend it so I can move that little welder where I want it to weld. Now, to run a stick welder, you of course run hence they call them a stick. You run a stick. I can't get one out. Now, how this works, that's basically your rod, your welding rod. Now, how these things work is that they create an electrical circuit, and with a high current, and they cause an electrical arc. That arc heats the metal up and bonds them together. The stick fills the void that's left by melting the metal. Now, depending on the thickness of your metal, depends on how much current you're going to run. Now today, I'm going to put that back. I'm running something called E611 rod, 1/8. So the nice thing about this little guy on the front of it, I don't know if you can see it too well, it has a dial which cranks up the current. It also has 4 lights. It tells me what size rod I need on that current. Now I'm going to run probably 1/4 inch metal, so I'm going to run up about 120 amps. Again, I'm just learning, so something that I've been playing with and trying to learn. The thing with welding is one of those things you can go on YouTube, you can go whatever you want to do, and you can get the basics of how to weld. But the only way you get good at it is by doing it. Now, of course, there's some other things you're going to need if you want to weld. You need a set of welding gloves. If you're stick welding, you're going to need a chisel slag hammer, because it does leave a slag on the weld. And you're going to need a welding helmet. Now, welding helmets have come a long way. These are auto darkening now. The old days when I started, first introduced to welding, and I hated it, was you put down your mask, it was dark, you couldn't see what the heck you were doing until you struck your arc. Well, these ones here are light till you strike your arc, then they're fast enough that they darken up and you continue on welding. So if you're going to weld and you want to get into it, you're going to look at some cash outlay. You're going to need a slag hammer. You're going to need some sort of little welder. Again, do your research, find out what's best for you. In my case, just a little stick will do more than enough out here. I do have a wire feed, like I say, at my homestead on grid, and it has special capabilities that I'll show you on another day. You're going to need a welding gloves, grinder, and you're off to the races. Of course, you're going to need to buy rod. Lots of different types of rod. I use E6011 rod. It likes dirty metal. It can burn through rust. It's basically called farmer's rod, which means it will do the job. It will hold the metal, but it ain't going to be pretty. Farmers typically, or homesteaders, aren't professional welders, and if you are, great. So folks, that's kind of my introduction of what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do some welding. One skill I suggest you learn, don't be scared to learn it. You are going to make mistakes along the way, and you're going to have shitty welds, and you're going to have ugly welds, and I can show you many of my welds that, my goodness, man, they look like somebody just put bubble gum down. But they do hold. Don't be scared to try it. The only way you're going to get good at it is to do it. And of course, for everybody who is going to encourage you, like I will, there's going to be somebody who's going to look at your work and go, well, that looks like shit. Well, too bad. You know what? For all those that like to discourage and put down, there's many of us who are going to encourage and stick with those people. They're the positive people you want in your life. Anyway, you have a good day here at River's Edge Homestead. I hope I didn't bore you to tears, and I hope I gave you some sort of enlightenment on what I do for welders. You have a wonderful day.